Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan. I'm Askar Sheraliyev. 4 suspected terrorists were eliminated at the special operation in the Koktem village settlement in Atyrau. General Prosecutor's Office says they were involved in the armed assault on patrol policemen and the DIA office on the night of September 14th.
Remove the camera or you'll end up in a prison cell. The law enforcement launched the operation to neutralize suspected terrorists at 8:30 in the morning. Around 100 policemen and Interior Ministry soldiers sealed off the area with armed vehicles. Tenants of nearby buildings were evacuated, but despite the scale of the operation, the police continued to assure the press and population that it was just training exercise. Later, locals reported about hearing 5 explosions. The official press release of the Prosecutor's General Office explained that suspects in the attack on the policeman on September 15th ignored the calls to surrender and opened fire. By the end of the operation, all 4 alleged terrorists were killed. Arms and ammunition were found in the hideout, along with Molotov cocktails and parts of makeshift bombs. Residents of the area say the dwellers of the shabby house never attracted any attention. We were all taken outside to the street away from here, but we could still hear automatic gunfire, although I didn't hear any explosions. I don't know who lived there. Some say they were Wahhabis. They woke us up in the morning and my wife's father told us that police is all over the place. They came to our house and asked us to stay inside. One of the policemen told me that we should be wary of stray bullets. I climbed to the roof out of curiosity and saw bullets flying and a couple of explosions.
The attack on the DIA office in Atyrau took place in the early morning of September 15th. Unknown perpetrators threw a bottle with an incendiary mixture inside the building and shot at soldiers at the checkpoint, 2 of whom were hospitalized.
The suspects fled the scene after policemen opened return fire. The special operation to intercept them was in effect across the entire region. A week later, police reported that the criminals were located in a house of Koktem village near Atyrau. The incident was already 3rd in the region involving firearms. A few days before, law enforcement conducted a special operation in Kusari, killing 5 and wounding 1 alleged terrorist. Security officials said they traced suspects in the bombing of September 5, 2012, which killed Nurlibek Sakauov, supposedly while assembling a makeshift explosive device.
Staff reshuffles in the higher echelons that were forecasted long before the opening of the new political season took place. The most intriguing news is the removal of Chief of Staff Aslan Musin and his appointment as head of the Audit Committee. From now on, the head of the State Affairs will be managed by little-known Abay Bisimbayev. Former heads of these bodies, Amarkhan Aksikbayev and Serek Umbetov, political veterans, received parliamentary seats and will now serve in the lower chamber of parliament.
On Friday evening, following weeks of rumors, Aslan Musin was dismissed from the position of the President's Chief of Staff. The official decree was published on the website of the President's administration. In the morning, 2 members of the ruling party, Nurotan, Serek Umbetov and Amarkhan Aksikbayev, received their new MP badges. Until afternoon, it remained unclear who will take the last seat in the accounting committee. Then, unexpectedly for many MPs, Aslan Musin was appointed as head of the agency controlling the implementation of the state budget, while little-known Abay Bisimbayev assumed the position of the President's Chief of Staff. Several ministers' cars were parked near the President's administration office at the government building for several hours, as according to rumors, the highest-level meeting was in progress. The number plates of the cars indicated they belonged to the Ministers of Emergency, Economic Development and Finance. However, the senior officials of the country were reluctant to give comments about what was discussed and what other changes can be expected. Aslan Musin's deputy picked up the pace trying to avoid reporters. Finance Minister Bolar Jamishov referred the press directly to the President for detailed information. What replacements do you want me to comment on? It's not a dismissal of the Chief of Staff, it is a new appointment. As to whether this is a demotion or not, talk to the President in the office across the street. The decision was taken by the President's decree. Musin led Nazarbayev's administration for 4 years. Through the entire last year, experts repeatedly predicted the staff power broker to lose his seat, saying that the clean face-off between Musin and his old rival, the National Security Committee Chairman Nurtai Abakayev, has reached its lowest point. There were rumors that Musin's ambitions and growing influence even started to concern the President himself. When Brigade Iskaliyev, Atyrau governor and Musin's secret affiliate, was dismissed in August, the removal of Musin himself seemed imminent. That is when another plausible explanation of developments emerged. Musin could have resigned voluntarily in exchange for a promise that his man, ex-governor Iskaliyev, will not be tried in court. Consolation comments are appearing in press. The president's political advisor, Yermukhan Yertizbayev, called Musin's appointment highly important, saying that the president can entrust the accounting committee only to the most reliable people. However, the last committee chair, MP Oksikbayev, used to complain on the lack of political weight of his post and hinted he simply performed the functions of a calculator. This makes it all the more interesting to see whether Musin's appointment will add some weight to the committee or Musin himself will lose his past power and influence.
National Leaders advisor Yermuhamed Yertizbayev commented on the reshuffles on Friday. Aslan Musin's move from Chief of Staff to Chairman of the Audit Committee was labeled normal rotation, and Musin's new position highly responsible. Yertizbayev also named Musin's possible replacement in connection with a cabinet dismissal expected in the nearest future.
I believe that there is in fact little choice. I think that most likely the change of the cabinet, which could happen on Monday, will possibly move Karim Masimov to the position of the president's chief of staff.
In the meantime, politicians and analysts are debating what served as a motive for Aslan Musin's departure from his post. An equally important question is, how will it affect political life in Kazakhstan? Here are the experts' opinions.
The talk of Aslan Musin's weakened position was around for quite some time. Nevertheless, the sudden news of his transfer shocked everyone. Rumors about the shaking seat under the power broker of the president's administration spread immediately following the scandal with the dismissal of his protege, former governor of Atarau region Birgay Iskaliyev. Political expert Andrei Cherbotarev says that Aslan Musin set off a serious imbalance within the ruling elite and eventually became a victim of backstage games. The expert believes recent events in western Kazakhstan could very well be associated with this development. It is a fierce struggle for power between different special interest groups that are using all means available. It is possible that someone was responsible for provocations of unrest in Zhanaozen. Obviously, it's hard to point fingers now. My personal opinion is that this is just a showdown between the elites. The former presidential candidate Salim Oten says that we are witnessing just a castling on the chessboard, which is not going to benefit ordinary citizens. After all, the same people will remain in power. Oten agrees with the assumption of backstage games. The fact that Aslan Musin left the administration for the Accounts Committee only proves the showdown between clans. In other words, the South, or rather the large tribe of Almaty in general, will not allow anyone from so-called outskirts to be in power. At the same time, politician Ualikhan Kaysarov emphasizes that Tarkhan Oksikbayev lost his chair at the Accounts Committee for his enthusiasm in identifying financial frauds within the government. The official spoke about embezzlement and undeveloped budget a little too often, whereas Musin is now caught in between a rock and a hard place in his new position, says the public activist. He has his hands tied by this very position. Now that he is chairman of the Accounts Committee, he will have to expose regional governors and leadership of central administration offices, whom he personally appointed as chief of staff. Opposition leaders are very pessimistic about the reshuffle. The resignation of Aslan Musin is not going to solve sore issues, according to the Social Democrat Amirjan Kosanov and Communist Sergbolsin Abduldin, because the overall system and the will of the nation's leader in particular are the only things that truly matter in Kazakhstan. Shifting separate individuals is not going to change the situation. I believe it does not matter who is in charge of the president's administration as long as there is a restrictive policy against dissenting. Anything that is happening in the government is not meant for the fate of the country, but for the convenience of one individual. It is up to the president whom to appoint and move. Ualikhan Kaysarov sees certain advantages in Aslan Musin's dismissal. He suggests that terrorist and extremist attacks in the west of the country will decline due to the resignation of the former chief of staff. Since the current Defense Administration and Security Council cannot do much, the new team has the perfect opportunity to improve the situation.
One of the first people to place direct blame on Aslan Musin for the December events in Zhanaozen was public activist Oligen Zhukeyev. He announced the names of those responsible for the tragedy in the oil town at a press conference.
Прямо нужно говорить о политической и уголовной ответственности Мусина.
We should be clear about Musin's political and criminal liability. This man has the stainest of reputations. I've known many administration executives, but I've never seen such a mean, double-faced and cruel man. When Nazarbayev is made historically and politically liable for what he did, Musin should be tried first. He gave the orders to Kasimov, which Kasimov doesn't deny. This speaks volumes about the Interior Ministry.
Как он не отрицает, еще раз говорит, это каким должен быть министр внутренних дел?
Unrests were reported in penal colony AK 159/18 in Karabas village of Karaganda region. The convicts organized a mayhem supposedly protesting the move of some convicts to other prisons. Internal troops were deployed to the prison, around 140 soldiers. As was confirmed by the special prosecutor of Abay town, Khairullah Aidbekov, 32 convicts resisted the police, resorting them to use non-lethal weapons with the least damage to the health. The rebels were put into the disciplinary cells. Moreover, 5 convicts have caused themselves injuries and received medical aid without hospitalization. 20 relatives of convicts who were at the gates of the prison were detained on Friday. They were accused of violating the order and put on trial. More details in the next report.
This Thursday was a nightmare for Lyudmila Stanko. She spent the night in the police and appeared in court next day. On Wednesday night, she arrived in Karabas village to support her friend whose husband is serving a sentence in the penal colony. According to Lyudmila, the situation became more tense towards the evening. The relatives of inmates spent the entire day trying to receive clarification from security forces on what was really going on in prison. Was there a riot? And whether their relatives are still alive? Finally, a few women have lost their nerves. They started insulting the security forces officers, and then someone from the crowd started throwing stones. Of course, I did not have the right to talk like this. Apparently, it's illegal. However, we were in the state of shock, acting hysterical. We have learned about 6 dead among the inmates. There were some individuals who caused this gathering to turn into a mob with disruptive behavior. There was alcohol involved. People were yelling and whistling before midnight past the bedtime period. 24 women were detained and pleaded guilty in court. Lyudmila and other participants were fined for disobeying the police and organizing an unauthorized protest action. On Friday, the prosecuting attorney reported that a scheduled inspection took place in the colony on September 20th. He assured that no inmates were subjected to tortures. On the contrary, prior to the search, 10 prisoners have beaten themselves to blame it on the leadership of the facility, while the administration has made every effort to inform the relatives that all is well in the colony. We have filmed the inmates with video cameras and shown the footage to the crowd. It decreased the tension and people began to leave the scene. Showing the video to mothers, fathers, and wives of the prisoners in order to set their minds at rest was a priority. 24 relatives are still waiting outside the gates of the colony. They have not received any evidence that their loved ones are all right. I have not seen it because they only partially revealed the footage. They informed us that it was going to be a bedtime for the inmates and that we should come back in the morning. They promised to show us everything, although when I asked them, they told me the opposite. They said it was not my business and that I should go home, and the inmates are going to be fine. How are we going to sit at home when this is happening to them? According to official data, 2 prisoners who inflicted self-injuries were rendered medical aid. It is not clear when and how the visits to the colony will resume. It is also reported that the inspection of the facility resulted in confiscation of 50 mobile phones and other prohibited items.
What really happened in the penal colony AK-159/18 in Karabas village of Karaganda region? Why dozens of relatives were kept unaware of the situation? Reporters and human rights activists are trying to discover the details. However, little information is provided by the relatives only.
The attempts of the relatives to meet with the inmates of the colony in Karabas-Karaganda region ended in tragedy. The wife of one of the inmates suffered a miscarriage. According to her, special forces were sent to disperse the crowd gathered near the colony. All those who showed resistance were arrested. I tripped and fell. He was chasing me. It was 1 a.m. and it was dark. I managed to get into a car, but he grabbed me. I did not get home until after 2 a.m. At 6 in the morning, I started feeling really bad and called the ambulance. This is how I suffered a miscarriage. The woman has not decided yet whether she will complain about the actions of security forces. She is afraid that it can negatively affect her convicted husband. She just said that on September 20th, she was among other relatives of the inmates of the colony in the Karabas village. They got anxious by the news that the riot broke out in the colony. Additional military units were brought in. 2 inmates deliberately injured themselves in protest. The official version, it was not a riot, just a reaction to the planned search and inmates' illegal demands to ease the regime. Social activist Jamis Turmakambetova has heard this standard formulation many times. She insists all of the riots in colonies need immediate investigation and jails themselves should be under public supervision. I can already guess what the replies will look like. They defied the rules, they demanded easing of the regime. But why is this happening? There must be a reason. It was not a one-time occurrence. It is the way for these people to voice their protest. The member of a local legislative body, Ramadan Sarpekov, has not followed the scandal concerning the inmates' riot in the colony in Karabas village. However, he was not surprised at the news about the incident with the inmates. He thinks that the prison system only suffers from its transfer to the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. He reminds that inmates are also people. They have the rights that must be respected. If there are reports of torture or harsh institutional treatment, then it is the prosecutor's office that needs to investigate those claims. Meanwhile, social activists have not yet received a response from the chief state prosecutor and the Minister of Internal Affairs. They are demanding a fair and open investigation of a recent riot in the colony, which is also located in the Kazakhstan region. Relatives of inmates say that on September 3rd, 16 prisoners were taken to Albay Hospital and other 3 inmates were murdered. It is known that the riot was caused by the confiscation of prisoners' personal items. However, a local prosecutor has denied any violations in the actions of security forces.
There is no hazing in Kazakhstan. There are cases of hooliganism and non-manual relations. This was the fine line drawn by the leadership of the Republican Guard during the roundtable discussing the violations in the military.
In the meantime, military personnel are concerned with the increasing number of young people involved in various religious groups. In particular, the number of Salafi followers has increased lately. Therefore, military enlistment offices currently select their conscripts very carefully. It should be noted that men with a height below 165 centimeters will no longer be eligible for military service, considered as permanently unfit. The list of health requirements is reduced to only one. A conscript should be in good health, whereas the notion of hazing still has not been admitted by the army officials. Reporters inquired what caused the incident at the Arkhangelsk and Tersarik outposts, and the deputy commander of one of the Almaty military units responded that these were in fact non-manual relations and abuse on the part of contract military personnel as opposed to hazing. Apparently, incidents of this kind happen very seldom. This was a singular incident. We need to solve, analyze, and come up with some sort of a gradation between contract servicemen and conscripts. Basically, chiefs and commanders who sent new military personnel to the outposts without studying their cases are the ones to blame.
The deadline for the registration of all religious associations is October 25th of this year. This was voiced on Friday at a press conference organized by the Justice Department of Almaty. Those who miss the deadline will be recognized as illegal.
Religious associations which fail to re-register before October 25th will be required to stop their operation. According to the Department of Justice, 158 religious associations are registered in the Almaty region. Only 69 of them filed for re-registration. 3 statuses of associations were identified: local, regional and national, with 5,500 and 5,000 followers registered required, respectively, to obtain the operation permit. Officials of the Justice Department emphasized that religious organizations with fewer followers will be required to stop their practice.
Pro-government organizations dealing with problems of the youth put wool over the officials' eyes. This is the opinion of other members of youth organizations with less loyalty from the state. At the moment, Kazakhstan has around 20 different unions with growing misunderstanding between one another. Even in the past, the relations between them were not quite friendly. However, the accusation of embezzling budget funds is made for the first time. More details in the next report.
Youth activist Ulan Shamshet revealed something that was previously only rumored. The representative of the Independent Center for Active Youth accuses his associates from other, more pro-government associations in inefficient use of budget funds. Supposedly, the money is simply wasted and real youth problems are tackled only in documents. There are many pro-governmental organizations engaged in youth policy making, for example, the Congress and others. They get funds from the state budget, but then they simply put wool over officials' eyes. They're engaged in public relations and talk only about how everything is fine, how people like the president. Honestly, that's the truth about what they do. These people represent the criticized organizations. Their leaders once again gathered at the round table to discuss the implementation of youth policies. During the meeting, they don't make any groundbreaking statements and only briefly touch on real youth issues. Everything discussed is revolving around the agenda set by the head of state, including working for the benefit of the homeland and personal financial security. The activist of the Kazakhstan's Students' Alliance, Almas Tagay, explains benefits of President's program, Employment 2020, through his own case. He did find a job at the Taras plant. It is an excellent program. I might say that my world view changed a little. I'm not even talking about being independent. Indeed, it is quite important to implement the youth policy. According to Nursultan Abishuli, a medical school student and the namesake of the president, the perseverance will prevail, just like it's declared in the Universal Coalition of Labor. During his report on religious views of Kazakhstan youth, Abishuli indicated several issues, all of which will be solved while Nursultan Nazarbayev is in power, the speaker says with confidence. There are many issues that exist in our state, including unemployment, religious extremism, etc. But we know about them, and all of them are internal problems of the state which need to be resolved. Fortunately, our state is moving forward. Our President Nursultan Nazarbayev showed us the path we need to follow. Young activists of pro-government ideology ignored Ulan Shamshed's accusations. They, however, for the umpteenth time discussed the key points of the president's universal labor idea and religious preferences of the youth. Notably, the imam and pastor invited to the last meeting were actively inviting the young people to visit their church and mosque, saying people should only follow official religions, which, interestingly enough, confirms the fears of Ulan Shamshed. He says that while youth leaders spend public money on such gatherings, bored youth people are increasingly becoming interested in non-traditional religious movements and even sects.
Kazakh language needs support. This is the motto of a sanctioned rally which is to happen in Almaty behind Sararka Movie Theatre on Saturday. Poet Mukhtar Shakhanov is the organizer of the gathering.
The event organizers want the same local intellectual elite whom Shakhanov recently urged to launch a referendum against customs union to participate. A dedicated meeting will be held next week, and for now the Eurasian integration issue remains on the agenda, along with the discussions on state language. Mukhtar Shakhanov's staff is now actively preparing for the event, and in between production of leaflets and posters, activists are calling up potential speakers and guests. Many of them turned down the offer, explaining they unexpectedly have to attend or deal with another important event or issue. Organizers believe such response is a result of pressure from the authorities. The authorities are against this event, and by all means they are trying to limit the number of participants. Suddenly they put the university students in the buses, supply them with everything, and send them somewhere for short vacations.
Prices for highest grade flour went up in Pavlodar. Now 1 kilo costs more than 50 cents. Even social stalls have to put up their price tags for flour.
Flour producers explain the price hike by the rising grain prices, which supposedly elevated wheat costs by up to 40%. The anti-monopoly agency already launched an investigation into the matter by initiating inspections of local mills. We have sent additional inquiries about the prices during grain purchases, as well as remaining stocks. Right now, we are trying to determine the fairness of the price increase for superior grade flour. A very similar situation occurred 2 years ago when several entrepreneurs took advantage of the market condition and raised flour prices, and that is why Pavlodar residents were not surprised this time over. What can I say? It's not good, but it is not in our powers to change anything. That is it. A price increase is bad news, especially for people on pension who get affected the most. I have a very small pension, so I buy bread and low-budget groceries. I do not buy flour.
The public and Turkestan districts of South Kazakhstan region are trying to achieve the conviction of one of the school teachers. According to the villagers, he was beating his student for several years. Moreover, he's to blame for the tragedy which happened in the family of a boy 14 years ago. But the teacher is continuing to work in the school. More details in the next report.
17-year-old Kaljan Sirghazi can hardly hold back tears. He remembers well all the years when he was under constant fear of violence and verbal abuse on the part of Yeset Mirzakhmet, his physics teacher. He has been beating me up since grade 7. Last time he beat me up because I was late. He dragged me to the street and started kicking me in front of everyone. I did not want to come to his classes. He beat everyone, but we all were afraid and kept silent. Kaljan had also kept silence for 5 years. When his family found out, they took the issue to law enforcement, but the police refused to initiate a criminal case against Mirzakhmet. We cannot understand why he is winning in court. Justice must finally prevail. However, the court is always on his side. National Democratic Party Nurotan demands to fire him from school staff. The district administration also insists on his dismissal, as well as city administration. The school faculty also voiced their complaints after an incident with a teenager. The administration dismissed the teacher, but he managed to get his job back through the court. Not only does he beat up pupils, but also other teachers. His mood is always swinging, and after that incident, he got really bold. He claims he bought the court. Village residents are certain that a man like that clearly does not belong in their peaceful neighborhood. Every day, villagers come to the teacher's house and demand him to leave. Aset Murzahmat refuses to communicate with his neighbors. Villagers speak of the tragedy in the same boy's family, but 14 years ago. It also happened because of Murzahmet's, but the teacher managed to get away with it at that time as well. Nothing changes despite us fighting against this for many years. After he raped my daughter-in-law, my son burned alive, and my husband suffered a heart attack. The entire village knows that my kin almost ceased because of him. We appealed to Masimov and Nazarbayev, but no one seems to be capable of dealing with him since he even hushes the court. If this was to happen in the past, he would have been stoned to death. It was a mistake to forgive him at that time. We are afraid that the boy who witnessed his mother being raped will start taking revenge. He must leave our village. The city prosecutor's representatives say that the boy's family took too long to bring the issue to the police. The expert review did not reveal any bodily harm after 10 days. However, the prosecutor's office will insist that the court reconsider its verdict and ban the teacher from working at school. On Thursday, we learned of the court's decision to give Aset Murzahmet his job back. We are now preparing an appeal. After the appeals court takes its decision, we will see if it is in our favor. If not, we will keep defending our stance. In a few days, the court will make a ruling regarding Aset Murzahmetov and whether he can work with children again. However, the prosecutor's officials say that it is up to the teacher whether he should leave the village or stay.
This is all we have time for now. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.